So within a year, I had recovered. I'd lost all that weight, I regained my health, and I got pregnant. So every single aspect of my life completely changed for the better.
Welcome to the Wise Traditions podcast, sponsored by the Weston A. Price Foundation for Wise Traditions in Food, Farming, and the Healing Arts. We are your source for scientific knowledge and traditional wisdom to help you achieve optimal health.
I'm your host, Hilda Labrada Gore. This is episode 66, and my guest is Leah McCullough. Leah is known as the Fibro Lady. Yes, Leah had fibromyalgia, a condition characterized by muscle and joint pain and overwhelming fatigue. But it is often misdiagnosed and misunderstood. She struggled for years without a diagnosis, consequently. And even when she got one, there were no answers that could lead her to healing. So on today's show, Leah tells her story of sickness and recovery. You will hear what worked for her and ideas for how to approach your own wellness, even if fibromyalgia isn't a part of it. Before we begin, let's take a moment to thank our sponsors. Wise Traditions is supported in part by the Weston A. Price Foundation. The Weston A. Price Foundation is currently in the midst of a discounted membership drive. Go to westonaprice.org to learn more. Oh, and one benefit of membership is becoming a part of a closed Facebook group for members only. It's a wonderful place where you can ask health questions and interact with me and other members of the foundation. So again, go to the website and become a member today. It couldn't be simpler. Welcome to Wise Traditions, Leah.
Thank you, Hilda.
Now, I understand that you've been healed from fibromyalgia.
That's correct.
I didn't even know that was possible.
Most people don't know that it's absolutely possible to recover from fibromyalgia.
All right, you're going to have to tell us a story.
Well, I was actually sick for nearly 20 years, and I became symptomatic in my early 20s while I was in the military. And sometimes I would be okay. I could go to work and come home and even exercise, but then sometimes I could just go to work and just have no life, come home and just go to bed. And the one constant during that 20 years, I was always in pain. I was always had widespread body pain.
Now, did you have the diagnosis of fibromyalgia, or did you just think, oh, I'm just fatigued, something's wrong?
That's a really good question. I was 7 years before I received a diagnosis. So in the interim, I was told things like, you have multiple sclerosis, or it's all in your head, when they couldn't figure anything else out.
I've heard a lot of people have been told that before, and they know it's not in their head because they're feeling pain in their body, and they just have to keep knocking on doors. So is that what you did? Did you keep trying to get to the bottom of it?
I probably spent tens and tens of thousands of dollars and went to multiple doctors, and I was probably on 30 to 50 prescription drugs, going through the different things, see what would work, what wouldn't work.
Sounds like that could wear a person's body out, just that.
Or their mental capacities. The joke is, what made you crazy, the fibromyalgia, or the doctor saying that you're crazy? Yeah.
So how did you get to the bottom of it?
Well, I was going to a really good integrative physician who was a pain doctor, and so that kept me probably from getting much worse and being stable. And then he actually encouraged me to try alternative treatments, which is most medical doctors would never do. And so that was one way he was a total maverick. And then, so eventually I met this woman who was giving a lecture locally called Why Is Everyone So Sick? And I didn't really care why everyone else was so sick. I wanted to know why I was so sick.
Yeah.
And she turned out to be the person who helped me recover. And it was about detoxification, a very gentle, easy detoxification. And as I got better, then she told me about the Weston Price Foundation, and that's when I got the nutrition piece of it. I was already eating full fat, low carb before, but I didn't know about the broth and things like that. And then that happened, and I got to know her for a really long period of time because we did some business projects together. And so we had almost a mentorship program with her. And so in 7 months, I was off all 9 prescription medications. I lost 70 pounds.
Wow.
And well, I haven't told you the most amazing thing. Besides recovering from an incurable disease,
that's not the
and losing 70 pounds, we'd been married for 8 years. We were over 40, and I became pregnant.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. And I had an easy pregnancy, and my miracle baby is now 7 years old.
Oh, how
He's
beautiful.
in second grade, and he's awesome.
So until that time, you probably couldn't even think about starting a family because...
I couldn't get pregnant. Nothing worked on my body like that way.
Why do you think your body was so broken down? How was it vulnerable to fibromyalgia?
I believe fibromyalgia, it could be partly genetic, like the toxins in the environment, damaged digestive system, vaccines, antibiotics, things, bad nutrition, meet up with your genetics, and then it's expressed in different ways. So if you have like 5 different people who smoke, they're going to have 5 different outcomes. Like not everyone's going to get lung cancer, but one guy might get diabetes, another guy might live to be 98 and die in a helicopter crash. So these things, the toxins, the poor nutrition expressed on my body, fibromyalgia.
I see. And so once you met this woman and she started telling you about the fact that you could detox, how did you go about that?
It was really easy. And I'll tell you in a minute what my reaction was to recovering. But it was really easy. I used a mineral called zeolites, which is very gentle and it absorbs outside of the digestive system, sucks up toxins like a magnet, and then it's out of your body in your urine or feces within 24 hours. And at the same time, I use a therapeutic grade probiotic to jumpstart the very long, slow process of healing your gut. But this jumpstarts it. So these two work synergistically. So instead of 1 + 1 = 2, it's 1 + 1 = 5. So within 3 weeks, I felt so much better. I thought I was cured. I wasn't. I had a long way to go. But within 7 months, I was off all 9 prescriptions. And I was sleeping, and I was, for the first time in nearly 20 years, I was pain-free.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Now, don't you look around now and see people who are diagnosed with fibromyalgia and wonder, why haven't they heard of this? That's what I would wonder. They've got to get on this train. Like, what is it? Is it because they're still seeing conventional doctors, or have they given up hope? What do you think?
Well, even the alternative therapists don't know about this. So my crazy reaction to recovery was I got angry. I got angry that it was so fast and simple and easy to recover. Why had I been suffering for so long? Why is this information being kept from me? The information wasn't being kept from me. The information wasn't even available. I mean, people just started using zeolites a few years ago. So it's not even like well known. The micronized zeolites, the ones that are so small that they can absorb outside of the digestive system. So it's only been around for a few years. I've been recovered for nearly 8 years, but before that, it only been around for maybe 2 or 3 years.
So you were angry because you were frustrated because you hadn't come across this before. But as you said, this information was not kept from you. It was fairly new.
Correct.
How did the person who happened upon it find out about it?
Okay, so this was not labeled, this is the cure for fibromyalgia. It wasn't even labeled like that. And it's kind of like a happy coincidence. I started meditating on this crazy, audacious idea of optimal health. And this is right when I was at my lowest point in the quagmire of my illness. So within 30 days of this, when I started doing this meditation, I had a dream I was back at work. And this is 6 years in bed at this point, of 12 to 16 hours a day in bed. And so nothing in my daily life would have triggered that dream. And then within 90 days of me starting, that's when I met the holistic therapist. And at that time, I just read a book by Dr. Sherry Rogers called Detoxify or Die. So this lady's like, why is everyone so sick lecture? And she was talking about detoxification. So I'm already primed to look for something to detoxify. So I started on the zeolites. And then I was talking to, her name is Victoria Smith of Significant Healing in Florence, Kentucky. And I said, hey, I'm not really seeing any results from this. And she says, well, add this other thing. So she added the therapeutic grade probiotic. That's when the magic happened. That's in 3 weeks, I thought I was cured. I wasn't, but that's how much better I felt.
That's amazing. Now you've been talking a lot about the gut. And so it's interesting to me. So fibromyalgia is related to our gut health. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think it's a big part of it. For some reason, the body's holding on to toxins. Our largest system of detoxification is our digestive system, or as people call it, the gut. So your system for getting the toxins out is broken. they're being sequestered all over your body because they can't be expressed, and they're causing all kinds of damages and hurt and things. And they're causing the food you're eating to actually poison you. So even if you eat good organic food, it's going to absorb outside of the gut with leaky gut, and you're just going to feel terrible all the time.
And this could be the root of the reason a lot of people are sick.
Exactly.
Even if they're not diagnosed with fibromyalgia. If their gut isn't working properly, this may be why they're feeling lousy, because the food is getting into places it shouldn't be getting.
Right, or components of the food. Like, so the proteins might be leaching out, or some other aspect of the food. But all disease begins in the gut.
Mm-hmm.
And then, so in my body, it was expressed as fibromyalgia, and depression, and anxiety, and PTSD, and migraines. So in someone else, it could be diabetes or lupus or whatever. Healing the gut, detoxifying the body, and supplying it with good nutrient-dense food is pretty much the cure for everything. And then you just have the details for like, okay, what's specific for fibromyalgia, what's specific for diabetes, or whatever it is you're looking at.
So when you found healing and after you had your son, did you decide, oh my gosh, I want to go on a quest to help other people? Is that how you got into being known as the Fibro lady?
Well, it kind of nagged at me. I was really excited about it, and I wanted to help people. But I was, once I got pregnant, I just wanted to be a mom. That's all I wanted to be. But it really did keep nagging at me. You got to write a book. You got to write a book. So when he was 3.5, I got sick of hearing myself saying, I'm going to write a book someday. And I was like, you know what? I just need to write it. And I have a good friend, and maybe not a lot of people agree with psychic mediums, but she's like one of my best friends. She's a psychic medium, and she says to me, you have to write this book because you're going to learn something from it. She's like, don't worry about helping other people. You're going to help yourself by doing that. And I thought she was meant like, I'll find out a little fact and I'll feel even better or something. But this has been the journey of a lifetime. This has been the most exciting thing, exhilarating thing I've done. This book has taken me all over the country and places and doing things that I never thought I'd do, and it's just been an amazing ride. So, I guess I did learn something.
And is your book focused on your own journey or on what other people can do to heal?
Well, my book has a lot of my own story in it because when I first got started, I didn't have a lot of testimonials. So it was just my stuff. On my website and on my other media now, I have all kinds of testimonials from other people. But what I did is I took everything I learned about recovering from fibromyalgia and I systematized it so people could easily follow it and do it over and over and over again. And that's what's happened all over the world now.
And are there alternative health practitioners who don't buy into this whole program or don't buy into your story? Just curious.
I've been really blessed. Everywhere I go, everybody's so supportive, and they're so happy that, like, finally somebody's doing something about this. The only time I ever get any kind of a negative vibe from somebody is if they're selling something for fibromyalgia or something like that, and they feel like I'm some sort of competition, which I'm not. I'm actually always on the lookout to help for the community to have any kind of help, because not everybody's going to do this protocol. They're going to, it's not going to maybe call to them or whatever. So I'm always on the lookout to help people any way I can.
How many people across the country and maybe around the world have fibromyalgia?
The official statistics are like 2 to 6% of the population. But when you add in chronic pain and chronic fatigue, and then when I was talking to some integrative medical doctors, and I said, well, and then when you add in people who are feeling really schlumpy, like they've lost the pep in their step, they're mildly depressed, they're mildly, have anxiety issues, and anything that can kind of be helped with detoxification and gut healing, that's about 75% of the patient population.
Wow.
Yeah.
But whether it's 2% or 75%, it sounds like there are some real keys to healing in what you've come across.
Yes, I believe so. And I'm just really excited about it because it's a very quick results way for people. And the sicker they are, the more dramatic the results.
Now, you said you were in groups. Are you in a fibromyalgia group, and can you encourage folks to try this out?
Well, I run 2 in-person support groups where I live in Ohio, one in Dayton and one in Cincinnati. And then I have a online support group through Facebook called the Fibro Hope Support Group on Facebook. And then just, people who are subscribed to the Fibro Lady, like I talk to them, with my emails and stuff. So that's how I encourage people. People find me mostly like through like Google searches and things like that. Just Google the Fibro Lady. I got all that stuff.
So if people don't recover their health, let's say they don't hear about your program or the protocol you recommend, what is the prognosis for a person with fibromyalgia?
It's actually very sadly bleak. They don't get better. They don't manage their symptoms particularly well. It's a scary amount of pain. I was in so much pain, I didn't understand how I could still be alive, which is very common. And a dirty little secret in the medical field is people with fibromyalgia die of suicide quite often. And not quite often, but that is something that happens, and it's not well known or discussed. But, I know of several cases. Or because fibromyalgia never is a primary, it's not a single diagnosis. You have fibromyalgia and something else like depression, anxiety, or whatever. So people die of their coexisting conditions. It's a bad deal all the way around.
I would be filled with despair if I was in pain and in bed all day and felt like there was no way out.
So that's where I was for the last 6 years of my illness. And that's when I started meditating and praying on this idea of optimal health. At the end of the day, it's a psychological game too. Your diagnosis does not have to be your destiny. You can decide what you want your destiny to be, not a doctor.
Stay tuned to learn about the results of Leah's meditation efforts. We want to pause now and thank our sponsors, the Weston A. Price Foundation. They are currently offering an incentive to join or renew membership for as low as 8 cents a day or $30 a year if you're in the United States. There's also a discount for international members and a low-income option. Your membership directly supports our podcast series, which is free, as you know. If you'd like to continue to enjoy this educational programming, just go to westonaprice.org and please become a member today. And listeners like you, Nina Danielle had this to say on iTunes. Great inspiration. I have been a fan of the Weston A. Price Foundation for 7 years now, and this podcast is wonderful for keeping me inspired and the ideas fresh. I only wish they could be longer. Always looking forward to seeing what is next. Thanks, Nina Danielle. And please rate and review us on iTunes, guys. We'd love to give you a shout out on the show, and it also helps people become more aware of it. Thanks again.
I was watching Oprah because, it's what sick people do when they're in bed all day. And she was still on network TV. And she had Jack Canfield there, and they were talking about The Secret and stuff. And he said, what is the most audacious thing you can think of? And I thought, the most crazy, audacious thing I could think of, besides winning the lottery, which would even be better, would have optimal health, and I could make all the money I want, right?
Right.
So I started to visualize myself. What would that be like? I mean, really in depth. What I did is I waited until I felt the least crappy during the day, which was after my afternoon pain pills had kicked in, and I would meditate on that, and then I just stopped watching TV, and I just decided to be happy no matter what. And my husband and people around me thought that I had recovered long before I did because my attitude had changed so much.
That's so interesting.
Yeah.
Wow, that's a good word for any of us.
I wasn't perfect, but I was so much happier. I just chose to be happy.
Yeah, I know there's a verse in the Bible that says, without a vision, the people perish. It's important to have some hope for the future and something that you're looking toward.
Yes. Well, I didn't have any of that. So when I was watching the thing with Oprah and Jack Canfield, and I got inspired to do something with my mind, because just to go take it back a couple steps. I used to live in Germany, and I had a 90-year-old Oma, or grandma. And she couldn't do anything. Like, she couldn't cook, she couldn't walk, she couldn't do anything. She sat and watched TV and watched the Pope on TV really loud. And anyway, but what I found out was that she prayed for everybody. And she felt like that was her job, and that was her contribution, and that kind of kept her in good spirits. Like, she felt like she was really contributing.
Yeah.
So I decided that, right around that same time, I was going to start praying, and I'm going to start visualizing and, doing that. So there's this other Bible verse about if you have the faith of a mustard seed, nothing will be impossible for you. And a mustard seed, if you look at it, is super teeny tiny. And I guess in the ancient world, that was probably like the tiniest thing they could think of that you would actually be able to see was this tiny mustard seed. So I had the faith of a mustard seed. I had like a little inkling like it would work, but I really didn't think it would work. But it made me feel better. So I started this visualization. And that's when the 6 years of stagnation just ended. So, I told you that first I had the dream and then I met the lady. So within a year, I had recovered. I'd lost all that weight, I regained my health, and I got pregnant. So every single aspect of my life completely changed for the better. And so like all my dreams in my whole life have come true now, or they're on their way. And, now I guess I got to start dreaming bigger or something. So.
That's amazing.
And I'm fueled by Weston Price food.
That's right. So tell me as you were in the recovery process, you said initially you thought that in 3 weeks, okay, I'm done. Then you realized, no, it's going to take a little longer than that. What did the protocol as you began to follow it in the day-to-day look like?
It's pretty easy, and it's kind of boring just to say, but it was just, I just took the supplements 3 times a day, and then after a while, I took supplements twice a day. So it wasn't anything hard to do. It was just a matter of being disciplined to take your, vitamins, basically. I was never a really big carbohydrates person because after I figured out that low-fat diets don't work, I should say. But I never was a big baker or anything, so I never ate a lot of wheat or anything. And then later on, after I recovered and my son was born and everything like that, we went on the GAPS diet. And I was already feeling great. And when I got rid of grains, I felt marvelous. So I do encourage people to go on a kind of a baby version of the GAPS diet. Mm-hmm. And they can implement it to one degree or another, depending on what degree of exhaustion they have. But definitely add lots of fat, lots of broth. And on my website, I have this free recipe for chicken broth. I call it Raise the Dead Chicken Broth. Because I've never actually been, able to get to a dead person to try and raise them, but I'm pretty sure it'll work.
Yeah, I think Sally always says there's an African proverb that says, good broth can raise the dead.
Yeah, so that's where the name came from.
That's awesome. Yeah. And I know the diet you're referring to, it's called GAPS for short. It's the Gut and Psychology Syndrome diet that Dr. Natasha Campbell McBride recommends for people with leaky gut or different autoimmune disorders. So can you describe what the Gut and Psychology Syndrome diet is like?
Okay, well, I'm not a GAPS expert, but I've been doing it off and on for about 5 years. And basically, you're eating easy-to-digest foods, and you're eating some healing foods, particularly lots of homemade broth and lots of cooked food and lots of fat. And it helps rebuild your body. And it's a healing diet. It's not a weight loss diet. It's a healing diet. And we avoid grains, which is like kind of the death knell for a lot of people. Like, well, I can't be without my grains. And no, you can, and you'll feel marvelous. And I tell people, maybe just try it for 30 days, see how it goes. And I say, go to the full GAPS. Don't do the introduction. Just go full GAPS first and see how you feel, and then do the introduction later if you feel called to do that. If somebody is coming to GAPS because their child is autistic, which is what it was originally developed for, that's a completely different story, and that's outside of my expertise. Mm-hmm. But we started it. My son had a GI issue. He had severe chronic constipation. He would only go every 7 to 10 days since he was a newborn. And we had kind of this whole, Dr. Natasha Campbell McBride talks about the whole GAPS child thing, and he had that going on, and he was a healthy baby, but all his milestones were on the late side of normal. Uh-huh. And so we did GAPS when he was 19 months old. He's been recovered for, 3 or 4 years now. We're probably cured, I would say. He's a healthy little boy. And we didn't realize he had behavior issues until he got so much better. I had such a better version of my kid. And And anyway, so it's much of a hassle it is to kind of like not do what everybody else is doing and do all this homemade food. It's worth it because we feel better and we're nicer to each other, and it's good that way.
Yes, children that misbehave may have gut issues that are
skewing their perceptions.
Yes, skewing their perceptions and causing them to act out. It's not just that they're in a bad mood or they're a feisty, troublesome child. It's that they're not properly nourished or they're having trouble with their digestive system.
Right. We used to call my little boy the grumpy baby because he was just never happy. He was not. I mean, we have lots of pictures with him smiling and stuff, but he just seemed very ticked off to be here all the time, and he just wasn't very, very happy or calm or mellow. And even though I was giving him full fat and good breast milk and all that stuff, and he's beautiful, and you're like, what does he have to be unhappy about?
Right,
and then
totally.
When we went GAPS, then he found his joy.
That's amazing. So the GAPS diet was part of the healing for your son and for yourself.
Yeah, I mean, I was already recovered from fibromyalgia. I was doing great, and everything was fine. But then when we did GAPS, everything was elevated to an even better way. And so when I help people recover from fibromyalgia, I don't say go full GAPS because that's going to be overwhelming for them. They're still in a fatigue state. So before we take anything out of their diet, we actually add stuff. So add the broth, add the fat. Those are the two things that are so important, and then tweak from there.
And obviously the Wise Traditions diet is all about those things.
Right,
so
exactly.
They will give you a step up, whatever your level of wellness or sickness is. Really, adding those things are invaluable. So,
well, and then the last piece of the food puzzle for me was, I had what I would consider normal amount of energy, and my little boy, when he stopped wanting to take a nap at 3, I was really bummed because I love those naps and I still wanted them. So I was looking for something to do to get more energy. And then I added liver to my diet. And I was convinced to do that. And I actually debuted a book here. When we're doing this recording, we're doing it at the West A Price Conference in Montgomery, Alabama. And I debuted my book, Eat to Energize, which is a cookbook. Because I don't like the taste of liver. And I don't like the texture of liver. So I was convinced, though, after reading the Ershoff rat study in Wise Traditions magazine, I was convinced to try it, and figure something out. So over the course of 3 or 4 years in my kitchen, I've developed a number of recipes to hide the liver and a number of strategies and principles. So that's what I wrote my book about. So that's my second book, is a cookbook.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, it's Eat to Energize. I don't know where it's available at yet, but it'll probably be on my website. It'll be on my website.
It will by the time this airs, but it'll be on there. So, well, this is excellent conversation, Leah. As we wrap up, I want to ask you what I ask a lot of my guests. If the listener could only do one thing to improve their health, what would you recommend that they do?
Oh, now, are you asking above and beyond a Western Price diet?
Sure, above and beyond.
Above and beyond, I would say detoxify, and the easiest way is with zeolites. And that will help pretty much anybody with anything. And then when you have a naturally detoxifying diet, like a diet that's high in vitamin A, like the Western Price diet, then you're going to have great results.
Excellent. Well, thank you for your time today.
Thank you.
My guest today was Leah McCullough. To learn more about Leah's journey and her helps along the way, visit her website, freedomfromfibro.com. Or just go to the westonaprice.org website, scroll down the homepage, and click on Podcast of the Week. Click on the show notes for episode 66. And a big thank you to Sarah and the team at Podcast Village for your invaluable tech support. I appreciate you all very much.
Did you know that there are Weston A. Price Foundation chapters all over the U.S. and around the world? Chapter leaders help you find good food in your area, and some have meetings you can attend. Go to our website, westonaprice.org, and click on Find a Local Chapter to see if there is one near you. Wise Traditions is brought to you by the Weston A. Price Foundation for Wise Traditions in Food, Farming, and the Healing Arts. The content of this podcast is provided for informational purposes only and is not intended as a substitute for medical advice.